Hello, folks. Welcome back to my C++ tutorial. Now we are in part 3, which is basically loops. There's 3 types of loops that we're going to cover. A few things before we get started. Just a reminder that we're going to be using the increment and decrement operators. Remember the plus plus and minus minus for increment or decrement. One thing to remember, and like a refresher, is that if the plus plus or the minus minus is before the variable, then the value is incremented or decremented before. And if it's afterwards, it's decremented afterwards. So in my example here, int a equals 1, I print out plus plus a, it prints 2 because it's incrementing a before is printing it out. It is incrementing plus plus a, increments first. Then I do plus equals 4, so it's equals to 6, and I do see out a minus minus. So it's going to print 6 because the value of a equals 6. But a now equals 5. So it prints before it decrements. Just a refresher on that, right? So the first one, the first loop that we have is the while loop. The while is a loop where an expression is evaluated first. So there's always the possibility that it will not go into the loop. If I have a equals 5 and I do while a equals, inside the while a equals less than 3, well, obviously it's never going to go in. It's because it's evaluating before it goes in. So here are my examples of that. Int a equals 0, while a less than 5, see out a plus plus and l. So it's going to print a, and a is going to increment to have an a plus plus, and it's going to evaluate, but it's going to go in, it's going to evaluate at least once. But of course, my initial value is 0, so I know it's going to go in at least once. On my second example here, I'm using a string. Of course, we have to include string. Let's not forget that. And then I can do string str equals blank. While string not equal to stop, it's going to say enter string or stop to end, and it's going to input into string. Now, if it's not equal to stop, it's going to print it. Otherwise, it's going to stop, and then it will evaluate and get out, right? So it's a very straightforward loop. The opposite of the while loop is the do while loop. Here, same concept, except that it will at least do the statement or the block at least once. It will do something and then it will evaluate at the end. So no matter what the value of my expression is, it will execute the do while loop at least once. So in my example, I have int a equals 1, do see out a plus plus in line, and then while a less than 10. Int a equals 1, but it's going to print out a, and it's going to increment it at least once. My second example, I'm doing a double a 1.0, right? Instead of an int. And I'm going to print out a while, and then I'm doing a comma 2.0 of the POW, which is power of. So I'm basically, whatever the value of a is, it's incrementing by 1 and then 2 and 3 and so on. But then I'm doubling, I'm multiplying times itself. So I'm doing a POW. So when it equals to 10, it will be equal to 100. And 100 is not less than 100. So it will print all the way to 9. So that's how this works. Then our third loop is the for, and then we have a for, and then we have an initial value, a test, and an update, and then we can do the statement or a block. Some of the things you can do with a for loop, and then I have 3 variables, A1, B2, C3, expression, and then I'm incrementing B. Now, of course, I can have a one-line statement or some code. Remember, I can do on the first part, where is the initial value, I can put as many things as I want. Here I got 3 of them. I could have done 1, it doesn't matter. And on the end, on the update, I can also update many things at the same time. The only part of the for loop that is restricted to one thing is the middle one. B less than 10, A less than 10, A less than 10. Here I'm using 2, I'm incrementing these 2. Here I'm doing this. Yes, this is valid. I don't have to do an initial value. It's blank, doesn't matter. This one's required though, the middle one. Or I can do for int a equals 0 and then continue on. The reason for this is because I can declare in a variable here. Remember, this will be a local a. So if I have my brackets, a is only a here. If I had another a outside of it, it will be a different a value. And I mentioned this here, the sentinel is because sometimes in a while loops, for example, we can do a while a not equal to -1, do something. It's called a sentinel. This explanation is a little bit fast, but don't worry. I think the best way to explain all this is with the examples. So I have included 2 examples of each one of the 3 loops, so a total of 6 examples. So, and I will explain how they work one by one. So I think that's a better way. This right here are just the general statements of how the formulas and all that. So let's go ahead and check out those examples. All right, so here we are with our loops, loop examples. I'm gonna have 6 small examples using the different types of loops in C++. The first one is gonna be the while loop. And I made a file just called loop, no big deal. I'm gonna use the same file for all the examples because I don't wanna be redoing each one. The first example is just very basic. I'm going to declare a variable num equals 1. And then I'm going to do while num less than 10. And I'm going to make it a block even though I don't need it. I'm going to do cout num plus plus and line. And that's all I'm doing. It's just a while loop, very simple. Let's go ahead and run this. And here it is. Here's the example. So very basic. I'm including IOStream, obviously, and loop my example. Here's my comment. I'm using namespace std for standard. Here's my main. I'm returning 0. I declare a variable num equals 1 while num less than 10 do and display the num, and then I'm doing the num plus plus right here, num plus plus. So it's gonna print the num, which starts at 1. See, it prints a 1 right here. And then I'm going to increment it. So it's going to go to 2 and 3 and 4, as long as it's below 10. So it's going to make it from 1 all the way to 9. Now, the one thing to note here is that it checks for the value first. It says while num less than 10, num equals 1. If num was equal 11, I'm going to do that. I'm going to change it to 11, and I'm going to run it again. And there, it finished without printing anything. Why? Because it's already, over 10. And it only works if it's under 10. So that's how the while loops. I'm going to do something a little bit different. Now I'm going to do num equals 0 this time. And I'm going to do while num not equal to -1. And I'm going to do, this is another way to do our checking. Obviously, it starts with 0, and while it's not equal to -1. Is it -1? No, so it's gonna do my loop. So I'm gonna do cout, and I'm gonna put in enter a number. I'm gonna put a capital E here, or -1 to n. And I'm gonna send to num. If I'm gonna go ahead and combine it, if num not equal to -1, now what's gonna happen? I'm gonna cout the number is num and L. So what I'm saying here is, look, the initial value is 0. Is it equal to -1? Not equal to -1. I'm doing here the not equal to -1, which is not. So then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to enter a number, and I'm going to input the number. And if it's not equal to -1, I'm going to print it out. Otherwise, it's going to end. So I'm going to do 3, 4, 5. But the moment I do -1, it ends, right? So I'm asking for the number. If it's not -1, I print it. And the moment it is, it skips this, and then it gets out of the loop. That's how the while loop works. Now we saw that there's also the do while, which is the opposite of the while. In the do while, you execute the code at least once, always, at least once. Then afterwards, it'll check. So let's do a modification here. And I'm gonna go ahead and delete all this. So I'm gonna declare num as an integer, and I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do cout, enter a number or -1 to n. And I'm missing my little code here. There we go. I'm gonna send to num. Now, if num not equal to -1, cout the number is num. Now look what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna do while num not equal to -1, semicolon. So the difference is on the other one, on the other example, I had to declare, I had to have a value for num before I go check, while. Here, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna go ahead and ask for the number right off the back. I'm gonna go into the loop and ask for a number, not caring what it is. Then I'm gonna evaluate. That's the big difference here. So I'm gonna ask, and I'm gonna say 2, 5, -1, and it ends. So the difference was here, it doesn't matter what num is, it'll do the loop at least once. At least once, okay? Let's do another example with the do while. A little bit different, a little more complicated, I guess, if you want to say that. I'm going to double. A, B equals 0, C equals 0, and D equals 0. I got declared for it. I'm going to Boolean a flag equals true and char ch. And there we go, char ch. So I'm going to have all those variables. A, B, C, and D are doubles. I'm going to have a flag, which is going to be started as a true. And then I have a ch, it's a char. So I'm going to do, and I like to have it line up like that. That's because I'm weird that way. Okay. So do, I'm going to cout, enter numeric value. I'm going to send to A. And then I say B plus equals A. Now, what I'm doing is send A. I'm basically entering a value into A. Then I'm saying, hey, B equals to 0. Remember, B is equal to 0, but now incremented and add A to it. Plus equals means B equals B plus, right? Plus A. And then I'm going to increment C++. How about that? Like that, right? Like that. C started as 0, okay? Cout, add another number, question mark. And I'm going to send to the character, basically asking for a letter. If ch equals to n, then flag equals false. And I'm going to do this while flag, semicolon. And I'll explain this block right now, okay? Now I'm going to do D equals B divided by C. C out average is and that's it. So I have declared my variables. I have a flag, which is true. And I'm saying, hey, right off the back, just get into the loop, enter a value. I input into A, B, which is also 0, plus equals A, basically B equals B plus A, right? I'm incrementing C, which starts at 0, but the moment I do this, enter the first value, I'm incrementing C, so now it's 1. Then I'm displaying at another number. As long as it's not N, it'll continue to do this. It'll continue to do this. But the moment I say no, that turns into false, it exits. Now I'm going to divide B divided by C, and I'm going to print the average. So I'm going to use some very simple values. I'm going to say 1, sure. 2, sure. 3, sure. 4, sure. 5. And I'm going to say no. The average is 3. And that's how that works. I'm going to move this up so you can see it. 1, yes. 2, yes. 3, yes. 4, yes. 5. And then I say no. It's exits. And that gives me the average, which will be 3 in this case, because 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 divided by 5 is 3, right? 15 divided by 5 is 3. So going back to my program, declare the variables, have my flag. My do while is depending on the flag value, which is originally true. The only way to go to false is if I put an N, then it goes to false. Otherwise, it'll enter the value, increment my total and the number of items. And then now all I got to do is divide them and get my average. That's how the do while works in a second example. I'm going to do a very simple, I'm going to do a third loop. I'm going to delete all this for my fifth example. The first example using the for loop. So I'm going to do for int I equals 0, I less than equals 5, I plus plus. And I'm going to do C out I. I'll explain this right now. Don't worry. And then C out and I. So very simple example. It's a very short for loop, just to see the syntax. Now remember, we can declare variables anywhere in our C++ program, right? So I'm declaring it right here. Could have done int I over here? Sure. But the moment I do it here, I is declared within the for loop or block. Now I only have one line, so I don't have to do the block. I could put the brackets. It's not going to change anything. It's going to be the same. So I'm initializing my variable to 0. And I'm saying, hey, as long as it's less than 5, you know, I'm going to increment by 1 and do this one line. Now the /t here is a tab. That's all it does. So we're going to run this. And here is the answer: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Starts at 0 until it's equal to 5. And I'm going to print the number in a tab. These are the spaces it does in between. I think the average is 5 spaces, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, let's do a little bit more complicated now. Now that we know we can do a for loop, I'm going to int n. I'm going to double a, b equals 0, and c. Now all 3 are doubles. The only one is initialized is b, initialized to 0.0, okay? But all 3 are variables, doubles. And I'm going to do a c out, not clouds out. How many numbers to average? And I'm going to send to n. So I'm basically asking, hey, instead of you saying do a -1 or this or that, right off the back, how many numbers do you want me to average? And put the value in n. Now I can do for int I. You know what? I'm not even going to do the int I. I'm going to declare over here. I just decided to do that. For I equals 1, I less than equal to n, I plus plus. And I'm going to have a block here. So I declare my I over here outside. So it's going to be here, okay? Now I see I didn't have to do the int I, just did it over here. And it's starting at 1, less than equal to n or I plus plus. So the number of numbers that I got here is the number of times I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask cout, enter the value for number, and I'm going to put I and question mark. I'm going to input the number into A, and B plus equals A. So I'm entering the value, I'm putting the value I, and I'm inputting the value into A, which is a double, and I'm doing B plus equals A. Remember, I'm incrementing. And that's all I'm doing for my loop. I don't have to do anything else. Then C, which is a double, will be equal to B divided by, now I'm going to use something different here, static cast double n. And I don't need a dot here, obviously. Static double n. And I'm going to do cout. And you haven't seen the static cast. I'm going to explain it right now. The average is C and n line. Now, again, you have not seen this static cast. I mentioned it in a previous tutorial part, I think part 2, I believe, probably in 1 as well, I'm not sure. But so let me go over all this. I'm declaring 2 variables, I and n. I'm doubling, have doubles, A, B, and C. How many numbers? N. So for I equals 1 through n, incrementing by 1, enter the value of I, enter it into A. I'm only doing this so I can increment my total. And then all I got to do is, divide it. But remember, n is a double, right? I mean, I'm sorry, an int. N is an int. So static cast double n. So I'm forcing everything to be of the same. So here we go. Run loops. All right. How many numbers to average? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the average is 3. There you go. That is how the for loop works. Enter a value. The new thing here is static cast double in between parentheses n, which is an int. I'm making int into a double. Now I can do this division without a problem. And then, right off the back, how many numbers? 5. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, does it work with any kind of number? Well, sure. I'm going to do 5 numbers again. I'm going to do 12.4, 14.1, 3.6, 1.3, and 5.1. And the average is 7.3. See, because they're doubles. So anyways, I hope this little, these 6 little exercises help you understand loops in C++. Thank you for watching this video, and next week will be part 4 of my C++ tutorial. If you like it, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.